Olá, boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon. Let's start with our panel, enabling financial instruments and carbon pricing to boost offset markets in Latin America. And also, we are launching the Green Hydrogen Project with the University of Rio de Janeiro. I would like to welcome our speakers. We have Professor Emílio Lahovere, a copy of UFRG for the project Decarboost in Brazil. Also, Micaela Carlino from the Foundation Torquato Di Tella from Argentina. Then we have also Blanca Rendifo from Libélula, Peru. And then I would like to start. We have our remote guest, Mr. Jorge Arbache. He is director of CAF, Cooperación Andina de Fomento. Thank you for being here with us. And here in the beginning, I would like to show you a video where one of the panelists is going to speak. He is Marcos Franke from GIZ Brazil. First, we would like to start with the video.
To make this happen, we are working together with all important stakeholders from civil society, universities, industry, and local and federal government.
Bom, muito obrigada. E com isso, eu gostaria...
Thank you so much. With that, I would like to start showing the project, launching the project Green Hydrogen. This is the result of a cooperation, a bilateral cooperation, public-private, the German agency is financing this small-scale project. And here we would like to show you an application, a study where we are analyzing different production routes for green hydrogen. Well, as you all know, we have high expectations on this fuel to tackle the decarbonization that needs to happen worldwide. So this project is about the renewable hydrogen production, also about the storage. This is a very important topic we need to solve with a lot of technological barriers, compression storage, and also the use in energy and mobility systems. So here we have the overall objective. We have different production routes we are analyzing. One is using electrolysis with water and generating renewable hydrogen in a solar photovoltaic system that would provide energy, the power for this system. Also, the reforming of bioethanol. This is a very important topic here for Brazil with a high potential. As you saw, we hope that Brazil could be one of the biggest producer and exporter of renewable hydrogen. We have another route, that's the development of some catalysts for the production of e-fuels and e-chemicals. They also have a high potential for industry and transportation. And we have another source in stationary and mobility. We have some studies trying to use this also in buses. So basically, in mobility, we have one step in this project where we use the hydrogen in bicycles. Here we can see the H2 bike. And basically, we have the scope in our project. Here we have different appliances, production with electrolysis. So we have power generation, storage using mobility, and a very important route. So using CO2 to produce synthetic fuels with a high potential for aviation and navigation. Here we can see the image of our project. We're already concluding. We start producing in the beginning of the next year. Here we have some main equipments. We have here the electrolyzer, important project with a high potential. This is our H2 bike. Here we have the tank with a renewable H2. We have an autonomy of 150 kilometers, and we believe this can really help the e-commerce transportation in the city, the last mile. So hydrogen, we have a huge discussion. We see a lot of opportunity and also some barriers we still need to overcome. So safety, price is very important. But we believe that until 2050, we always talk about the new hydrogen economy. But I think 20% of the hydrogen in 2050 will be for the energy demand. So this is a very practical case, I hope you are interested to follow us in social media. Here we have also the folders with information of the project. You can download this in this QR code. And then I'm going to bring the floor to Professor Emilio.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. This is an event in this civil society space organized by the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, the scientific community that has always been together with the business community, the non-governmental organizations, also the unions, and all the scientific community, helping the technicians, professional technicians, and government agencies in this period where we didn't have a full support of the federal government. So I would like to highlight the importance of this collaboration. Different political leaders here, Marina Silva, our former minister, and now a representative, and also Isabella Cristina, former environmental minister, and they repeated the importance of this partnership between organized civil society and the scientific community. Now we had a concrete example of solutions with the savings using carbon zero to Brazil that can be expanded to Latin America and other parts of the world. In this second part of the event, we are going to show you a work that we have done for the past 3 years at the university and brother countries in Latin America, Argentina, Peru, and the collaboration of a South African NGO. And also showing the importance of the cooperation between and among developing countries with the support of the technical scientific operation of the German ministry through their initiative. which is an initiative for climate. So first of all, I would like to introduce the panelists that today will make their presentation, starting with the presentation by Argentina. Is not this presentation is from Micaela Carino, please. And basically the Decarb Boost project. It's a boost on decarbonization. And for this, we have to overcome barriers. We have to create new tools to overcome them, and at the same time use the existing opportunity. So the project focused on these three countries to work on this reality. Why decarbonization is so difficult, and how could we facilitate it? What are the conditions needed to make it feasible? This was done using the same methodology in the three countries. So initially, I would like to invite Micaela Carlino, which is from the Torquato Di Tella Foundation, which is a renowned think tank in Argentina. And they coordinated with a series of institutions in Argentina this work for the Decarb Boost project. So, Micaela, you have the floor.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you for inviting us today. I'm Micaela Carlino from Fundación Torquato Di Tella. It's nice to be here today presenting our results on the Decarb Boost project. The project aims to identify, as Emilio said, the enabling conditions to deepen decarbonization pathways in Argentina. And to do that, we focused in contributing by proposing regulatory amendments and policy proposals, and also financial instruments to take advantage of investment opportunities that today face different barriers and cannot be achieved and take advantage of. We also had a cross-cutting activity that was the stakeholders dialogues that was very important in order to validate our proposals in Argentina. The methodology that we have developed included the classification of different barriers. We had to identify which type of barriers the different mitigation options face in order to do the different proposals. So we made a classification of the barriers in terms of economic, financial, technical, political, and legal, and we then identify which types of barriers each of the mitigation options faced. There are some of these that are cross-sectional, and there are some that are very sectoral specific. So we identified the different mitigation options existing in Argentina according to the national plans, and also we identified new mitigation options that could be developed in Argentina, and we prioritized them in terms of three different criteria: emission reductions in order to contribute to the transformation, also the transformational capacity to take advantage of the different benefits that the different mitigation options have, and also that the mitigation options are feasible in terms of technical, economic, and financial aspects. We focus on three different sectors: one, the energy sector; one, the transport sector; and also the agriculture and livestock sector, forestry also sector. We decided to focus on those three sectors as they are important in terms of GHG contribution and also in terms of economic development. So after prioritizing the different mitigation options, we identified that there were specific vectors to guide the transition towards carbon neutrality in Argentina. For the energy and transport sector, the axis to guide the transformation should be to electrify. Today we have only 20% of demand that is electric, and we need to at least multiply by 3 the electric consumption. Also, we need to decarbonize. We have that our matrix is mostly fossil fueled, and we need to increase our renewables energy share, reduce energy intensity by different initiatives, including energy efficiency measures and also modal shifts, and to substitute the different consumption demand, the different demand that cannot be electrified. In the agriculture, forestry, and other land uses, the 3 main vectors to guide the transition is to capture carbon by increasing carbon stock in soils, and also to increase forested areas, to manage native forests, and restore different degraded lands. Also, to reduce intensity, emissions intensity in livestock and agricultural crops, and generate energy with products that today are considered waste, like excreta and biomass. So we identified different mitigation options that are investment opportunities. In the energy and transport sector, we identified that charging infrastructure is key in order to accelerate the electromobility in the transport sector. We also identified that we need to increase the renewables sources and to develop a market for the acceleration of energy efficiency across different sectors in Argentina. In the AFOLU sector, we identified the forestry sector as one that would increase the carbon sequestration in Argentina. Also, that in agricultural and livestock soils, we could increase carbon sequestration and also reduce the emissions intensity in livestock and agricultural crops. For those measures, we identified different types of regulatory and financial instruments that could accelerate the investment. In terms of the first cross-cutting proposal is to achieve concessional finance. We identified that for those investment opportunities that are very capital intensive, we need to focus on achieving and obtaining concessional finance. Those are the ones related with charging infrastructure, renewable energies, and forestry and sequestration in forestry value chain. We also identify an innovative financial instrument that is the development of the energy efficiency market through energy services companies, and also another cross-cutting instrument is incentives and price structures in order to give the correct signs to channel the investment to those activities, and that are good practices, reduction of emission intensity in agricultural crops and livestock, and to foster the energy efficiency on the demand side. As you can see, there are different colors. The colors are related to the impulse that we want to give in terms of reducing demand, in the decreasing intensity, or reducing GHG emissions. What we have concluded is that each main stakeholder is key in order to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050 that Argentina has committed to. In terms of regulatory framework, we need to transform the Paris Agreement and SDGs targets into credible policy framework and credible climate policies that are cross-section. We need also to develop the right structure of incentives and price signals in order to have certainty in terms of long-term investments. As the national financial system, we need to have a system that is aligned with carbon neutrality and provide different instruments as concessional finance, also innovative financial instruments, and also include reporting in terms of climate risk exposures. Lastly, we have the private sector. The private sector needs to design and implement transition plans and consider the risks and costs of inaction if it doesn't go in towards the carbon neutrality scenario, and also to identify business opportunities and develop new business models in order to be able to take advantage of an accelerated context of change in the following years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Micaela. We now have, yes, the same presentation of the Carboost activities and results of Blanca from Libélula in Peru. Libélula is also Libélula é também uma organização não governamental.
Well, she's also a non-governmental organization from Peru, and Blanca participates in all the activities, and a team, they do the management of the knowledge of this project. We have a lot of material, many webinars, and it's just, you just need to Google Decarboost, and then you can find a lot of activities and results. So, Blanca, without further ado, I'm happy to have you here to talk a little bit about Decarboost, the project in Paris.
Thank you, Emilio, for the invitation. And I'm pleased to present the result of the Decarboost project in Peru. We have focused on green economy reactivation due to the needs of our country after the COVID-19 crisis. This can be developed through new green investment for business development or new business model to become more sustainable, which allows more employment and less costs. In addition, it increases social and environmental benefits. This process involves the private sector, since it contributes to the market innovation by allowing the opening of new technologies, generate information on good practices, increase investment in decarbonization, and provides a market signal. However, the private sector needs help to understand what action can be done. According to the first report on corporate climate action in Latin America, development by Libélula, Latin American companies need to address climate change strategically. Only 22% of companies have identified and are managing the risk and opportunities brought by climate change. In order to understand the needs for the effective green economy recovery, key stakeholders were consultatively involved to carry out the actions in the project. First, a prioritization of mitigation measures were identified. Then, stakeholder interactions were made to understand the enabled condition, and finally, strategy alliance were achieved to execute the enabled condition. In this way, action have been carried out for 5 axes. Green criteria for private investment, green criteria for public investment, carbon pricing, teleworking, and renewable energies. So barrier analysis, there were found these ones. Focusing on green criteria for private investment, there is a lack or incentive in the market for the use of green instruments, both in banking and companies. Now, focusing for the green criteria for public investment, there is an absence of universal method for the formulation, evaluation, prioritization, and monitoring of the implementation. Then, referring to the carbon pricing, there is a lack of enough incentive in its use because it's difficult to understand the benefits. In the case of telecommuting, there is a tiny certainty in the regulation and is unattractive for employers. For another, the main barrier for renewable energies is a lack of energy planning that identifies the potential development of renewable energies. Subsequently, political instruments and financial mechanisms were implemented. This can be considered the most related to a carbon market. In addition, there is a promotion of the internal carbon pricing in the recommendation for the formulation of the carbon credit projects. In the case of renewable energy, the aim is to increase their participation in the energy matrix through the regulation for sustainable energy planning. At the same time, in the case of investment opportunity, the development of a carbon credit accelerator has been proposed, and it seems to be advised, financed, and executed in suitable carbon credit projects in Peru. In the case of renewable energies, there are some projects that are seeking to promote the use of source derivatives from solar panels and green hydrogen. And finally, the key findings for the projects are, first, the action of the Corbus project in Peru can help to reduce the climate financing gap, which exceeds 30 billion soles, it means $120 million at present value. If the political context is complex, the best is to concentrate on carry out action with the private sector. Example, develop our internal carbon pricing is more viable than an explicit carbon pricing. And finally, defining a path is a key to this organization. For this reason, since stakeholders need a greater overview in the regulation, most of the output of the Corbus in Peru had established green criteria based. It's necessary to share data or good practice to improve the decision making. Thank you for your attention.
Muito obrigado, Blanca.
Thank you, Blanca. Now I'm going to present the activities of Decarbus in Brazil, and I would like Andrea to monitor my time.
We in Centro Clima at the UFRJ, it's not an academic work. It involves 288 stakeholders, as we say, that is experts and interested parties in the different sectors in the economy about the decarbonization. So the idea here is exactly identify the barriers and see how we can make decarbonization feasible in Brazil using instruments and investment opportunities. So this project went on for 3 years. On February 23, it will be concluded. In our website, we show many results and also the barriers. Why does it happen? Why does decarbonization take so long. We have financial barriers, economical barriers. When the cost is reasonable, many times we don't have credit. We cannot make an investment. Qualification barriers, information barriers, the knowledge of information and specialized labor. This was analyzed together with a proposal for regulatory changes and market instruments, economic and financial instruments, but also command and control normative instruments. And we saw that we already have ripe fruits or the low-hanging fruits that are the opportunities for investment. As products, first of all, an essential instrument was carbon pricing to create a Brazilian market for emission reductions in the industrial sector and a carbon tax on fossil fuels in those economy sectors not industry related. And we did this analysis of barriers and opportunities of investment for AFOLU, which is the acronym for agriculture, forest, land use, and livestock, and also waste and sewage sector that brings us a lot of opportunities of energy to improve in sanitation in Brazil and to capture biogas, destroying methane that could be released into the atmosphere. And finally, we are at the brink of finishing a final report where we have an input to the national debate about the strategy and development of the low carbon approach, where all countries that are signatory of the Paris Agreement have to forward, and many Latin American countries have already delivered, but Brazil, we haven't even started a work on that. And here we have the contribution of this product in terms of a decarbonization strategy for a net zero emissions economy by 2050 in Brazil. This is just a spoiler of what we are finishing that we will have shortly. So information about the context, a projection of scenarios until 2050, or a more ambitious NDC in 2030, modeling methodology, the mathematical models of simulation, macroeconomy, and the different sectors, technological solutions, and actions identified according to their priorities, targets, and intermediate landmarks of performance, and then coming to the identification of the barriers, policy instruments, and investment opportunities. What are the criteria for selection, how we did this, what are the costs, and what are the contributions that we have of these mitigation actions for other objectives. So decarbonization is not the sole objective, perhaps not even the most important. It is necessary for the social and economical development and the investment requirements, how much development banks, how much the private sector, the public and private partnerships will have to allocate in terms of additional resources to what we have already today, and how to finance them. Of course, carbon pricing helps in this sense. We can have revenue from carbon pricing, but it's not enough. We need other financial instruments that are important. And this is also included in this paper. And finally, we have here a short list of the opportunities of investments, all the development banks that we will hear from CAF. And they complain that there is no pipeline, there is no portfolio of good projects. Money is not missing, good projects are missing. So here we have examples in the different sectors, AFOLU, transportation, industry, energy, and waste, that show that we have the possibility of immediate action. And obviously we have a presidential decree that established the Brazilian market of emission in May 19, 2022, we need just to make it operational. When we have this instrument of carbon pricing as being the most important one that it was selected, we have a series of instruments in each of the different sectors. I won't be able to detail them here now, but they are available in our paper, and also for each of the 5 sectors, in addition to the instruments, we have investment opportunities. So very briefly, we have, in summary, the results of the products that we wanted to share here with you, reminding you that there is also that concern of a fair and just transition. When we talk about carbon pricing, there is always a concern that this doesn't mean a tax increase. It means to use part of the carbon revenues to create new job positions, to reduce social burden, and also to have resources for a carbon allowance so that the most vulnerable populations of lower income can have access to a gas canister, to gasoline, to transportation with a diesel oil that can be paid by these families. When President-elect Lula says that the price of the gasoline and diesel oil has to fit the Brazilian's pocket, we believe that the solution is not what this current government did, but zero taxes to all on gas and diesel oil, also for the rich people. This means that those with big pockets have to pay and more for the diesel and gas that pollute, that created local health problems and created problems like global warming and global change. Now we have to increase the pockets of the low-income population. This yes, with a carbon allowance. And basically, this is an architecture of our proposal to use this fiscal income without increasing the number of taxes here in Brazil, and to return the economy through this carbon allowance. So the fair and just transition is essential. And this is an example of an instrument that can be used together with others that we identify to each and every sector, and that we hope that can be discussed by the next administration so that we have a just and fair development strategy for a just and fair transition, reducing social inequalities, which is the biggest challenge in the country. And for this also, we have to tackle on the climate issue. Thank you very much.
Yes, and now I would like to invite our special guest, the Vice President for Private Sector from CAF. The CAF is from the Cooperación Andina de Fomento, but it's bigger because it's now a developing bank of Latin America. So Jorge Abash is a colleague, is a professor at Brazilian University, and is director of CAF in São Paulo, very looking closely at climate change, launching an initiative in Latin America to support a strong carbon market in Latin America. So I'm very happy to have you here to share with us the vision of CAF and how we can tackle the challenges of decarbonization in Latin America. Emilio, good morning, good afternoon to you. Very happy to be part of this important panel and to have the opportunity to share a little bit of what CAF is doing in this critical agenda. As a development bank, we have the mission to help to boost the companies that are part of this collective interest of the agenda of energy transition and reduction of emissions. And we, beyond the conventional instruments, we want to focus on what we call the de-risking. So we want to create conditions so the market can have interest in working in the sectors with this important characteristic you already told and described as to accelerate the decarbonization in an attractive and sustainable market. So CAF works and focuses an instrument like debts and funds, and we support bonus emissions for green projects, green energy, and we do project financing. We work also with GSF and with sustainable financing. And as you said, we work with many development banks that are our partners. For example, BIS from Argentina and a COFID from Peru. These development banks are part of our alliance together with CAP to build this Latin American market for voluntary carbon credits. Well, I'm very sure that this is going to be an important resource to help financing this process. But I would like to highlight one important point that seems to me more and more important. So when we put it, the costs of this transition, the cost of decarbonization, in everything that is necessary to go on with this agenda, the estimates are huge. And even if we have the whole process of mobilization and de-risk, the costs will be high. And it is proof that we are going to do this in a very slow way. One possibility to accelerate this process is what we call the power sharing. So different than the near shoring or the friend shoring, we have the power shoring. What we see, and I'm just going to do the bridge between what I'm saying and the panel. What we have here now is that the factors depend on the localization of and also direct financing, international financing. So it's not anymore the cheap workforce, but the possibility to have green and safe and cheap energy, green energy. So this is going to be the driver. And this is going to determine where we're going to have plants, economic activities, and especially the energy-intensive companies. So we know that we have a lot of topics with China, the US, the war in the Ukraine and Russia, and other risks. So here we can add to the agenda the necessity to look for localization near the big consumer centers, especially for the development countries, and to work together with countries they already have a partnership, and also countries that have green energy available, to put new investments always in places where we have this green, cheap energy. This is a very fundamental point, this power sharing, because here we can identify incentives that are clear and that can foster many companies that are considering a relocation of their companies. They are considering bringing their companies to Latin America because here we have the possibility, we have the cheapest carbon worldwide. So this special condition and a privileged geographical localization can help to make this part of the world a platform for international investment, and also companies with a long value chain with a lot of jobs. But also these incentives, so here we can identify incentives for the big companies on the production sector to help financing the decarbonization process with green energy. So here we can see the interest of big companies, big multinational companies, and this is especially true for the next years for European companies that look for power safety. Here we have a marriage of interest between Latin America and developed regions. And this process of power shoring, and this is an important connection to this panel. So here, clearly, we can have an important resource for finance and the production of green energy, and also the green hydrogen. Of course, such a process demands a lot of things, logistics, ports, also a regulative framework, infrastructure, and this all together can create a set of initiatives. So then we can make some progress and have decarbonization linked to economic development and reduction of poverty and inequalities. So in many of the countries, we have quite green energy grid, and sometimes very green already, implementing their capacity to produce abundant green energy and quite cheap. And here we can add the Decarboost agenda to other agendas. And this component is very important to identify the interests of the big companies, because they look for price and the availability of green energy. And this is part of the financing of this transition process. So here we can really link the energy transition to social development and a reduction of inequalities. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. I believe that the concept of power shoring that Jorge developed in an article on the newspaper Valor Econômico last week is very important. And we had here the clear demonstration on the hydrogen project. Yesterday here in this Brazil Action Climate Hub, we had the governor of Rio Grande do Norte telling us about the large amounts of projects for Rio Grande do Norte, and also a poll for the production of green hydrogen, like other states in the Northeast. So this is already taking place. And certainly for an agenda like Decarboost, to be able to make partnerships feasible, public and private, because we need a regulatory framework in effect to facilitate public and private partnerships, and that can serve this wave, decreasing the risk for private investors and attracting capital. The big companies have different different possibilities of leveraging resources and all the value chain, right, that will benefit from all this green economy that is being built with the decarbonization. So I believe that it was a very interesting conclusion for our work, for our event here today. We are at your disposal. Thank you very much, Andrea, Blanca, and Micaela, and Jorge. And now we have here an opportunity of reflection and action to continue supplying instruments, supplying ideas, a debate now in the context of a new economy in Brazil and Latin America, with a possibility, as we see here in the call for, carbon market developments and other instruments to facilitate decarbonization so necessary, which is the ultimate objective of our Paris. Like now to use this moment, we don't have time for final statements. I would like to turn to each one and thank again, but just to close, I would like to make a general overview. So we had the opportunity of getting acquainted with this very important and very interesting project, the Decarboost, showing the experience in Peru, Argentina, and Brazil, having Professor Emilio as our leader here, Professor George from CAFI, with this vision of opportunities, not only in Latin America, with this high potential of supporting this urgent transition and to zero carbon until 2050. So we have all the tools and possibly even a menu of possible solutions. And also, I would like to remind you about the project of production of renewable hydrogen. It's now in small scale, but with a series of studies and a deep dive to find maturity, face the barriers that Professor Emilio mentioned, technological, regulatory, with an expectation that green hydrogen in 2030 reach the value of production of what today we have with blue hydrogen, with the reform of natural gas. We have to use it. This is a moment where we can celebrate the role of this research institutes, the academia, and I would like to thank then here on behalf of Professor Emilio and the other participants and myself, this space of Brazil Climate Action Hub, and say that it's very important that the academia is always involved in this participative process. I would like to say that Professor Emilio and I, we are part of the Brazilian Panel of Climate Change, and we had the pleasant satisfaction of speaking with the transition government, and we will resume this Brazilian Panel of Climate Change. We have a series of reports already published, so it's almost a feeling of relief, isn't it, Professor, that the Brazilian science will return to the negotiation tables and contribute in this process of transition to a bioeconomy and economy of zero carbon, because Brazil has enormous potential, perhaps the biggest in the world in terms of transforming. We have bioeconomy and a good place. And thank you very much to ICS and this space and all of you who were here. Thank you very much.